I'd like to introduce our first speaker. We have 4 speakers, as you know, plus we have a special guest that will be coming up. I won't give it away because it's so special. And then we'll have a Q&A, so you'll have time to ask your questions as well. That being said, our first speaker is Ken Kudla, and he is, I'm sorry, what? Oh, we're not sure if he is. Is he? Is he here? Oh, he's right. He's right in front of me. He's not sure, but no, you're committed now. You have to come up here. But Ken is a lifelong resident of Cayuga County, and he's the former president of ALA. Ken volunteers for numerous initiatives, including tributary water quality sampling, looking for hemlock woolly adelgid. And if you could say that 3 times, we will give you one to take home with you. He looks for them throughout the watershed's hemlock forest, and he is also a watcher for harmful algae blooms, HABs, and Ken has been married to his beautiful wife, Diane, for 55 years. Wow, congratulations. And has 2 wonderful daughters and 2 magnificent grandchildren. And Ken today will remind us all how important it is to be good stewards of the freshwater resources in our region of the world. So let's welcome Ken Kudla to the stage.
Well, thanks, Carrie. It's nice to be here today. Toy, I'd like to thank a few people before I get started. Linda Vitale was kind of the one that started us on this journey of trying to understand what's this water stuff all about. Julie, who's going to follow me in a few minutes. Adam Effler, he was kind of our technical guidance in terms of making sure that what we were saying was appropriate and correct and that sort of thing. And then, of course, Toy for all the hard work that she's done getting this forum together. So, one of the things that I want to make sure that you understand is that, we're all volunteers, so that's the statement that Adam and I pulled together. Is we're very blessed in this area to have such wonderful people on our AULA board. I mean, we have such a wide variety of people that have so many different kinds of skills. We have administrative people, we have government people, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have a PhD that worked for NASA, we have teachers, lawyers. We have so many people of varied skills that are on our board. And I think that's one of the things that really helps us get our work done is when we look at an issue, we're not just looking at it from the face of one person. We've got different views of different ways to look at things. And I think that's helped us a great deal. So, having said that, let's talk about water. I don't know if you all know these statistics, but they were fascinating as we went through and found it. So 71% of the earth is covered in water. Okay, so that's pretty cool in itself. But when you start to look at the water itself, 97.5% of it is salt water, so that's really not usable unless you do a lot of technology work with it. And 2.5% is fresh water. So 2.5% of all the water in the world is fresh water. That's the water that we use every day. So where is all that fresh water? Well, it sounds great, but 69% of it is frozen. It's in glaciers, and it's in snowpack, it's in Antarctica, it's in the Arctic, so that's 69% of it. 30% of it is in groundwater, and a lot of it is so deep that you can't really get to it economically. So that leaves just 1% of it. So where is all that fresh water? Well, about 21% of all the surface fresh water in the world is in the Great Lakes Basin, right where we live. And only 1% of that is easily accessible. So that's about 6 quadrillion gallons of water. That's enough water to cover the entire United States in about 10 feet of water. So just think about that for a second when you think about where we live. And that's about 95% of all the fresh water in the United States. So 8 states really have access to 95% of all the fresh water in the country. Now you know why there's so many disputes about water in the Southwest and the West and Texas and in the Midwest, because there just isn't that much water. So the other 42 states share that water. So as I was saying about the disputes. So let's talk about that, all that water. So doing so, let's have a little bit of fun. So if you look at the slide, you'll see how much water is used for some of the different things that we do every day. 3 gallons when you're shaving, 8 gallons when you're cooking, 30 gallons to wash your clothes or wash your car, 30 or 40 gallons to take a bath. And then there's a couple of other ones that I found that I thought were really kind of fun, because they're things that we experience. So if you have a leaky toilet, we've all had leaky toilets in our lives, and they leak. Well, a leaky toilet uses 22,000 gallons of water in a year. That's enough for a person to take 3 baths a day, every day. And there's 10 million acres of lawns in the United States of America, 10 million acres. And it uses 270 billion gallons of water every week to water those lawns. And that's enough for everybody in the world to take a shower for 3 days, which I thought was kind of an interesting statistic. So those lakes, this Great Lake Basin is a great big watershed that surrounds those lakes. So what is a watershed? Well, it's a area where all of the water that falls within a given area, and you saw the map of the Great Lakes Basin, ultimately flows into streams, rivers, and lakes that are part of the Great Lakes Basin. So every drop of water that falls in those basins are captured in those lakes. So as you look at this picture on the slide, it's not just the forest, and it's not just the land, it's not just agriculture, it's the city streets, it's the parking lots, it's the culverts, it's the drainage ditches. So every place that there's an opportunity for water to fall, it's going to ultimately flow into a catch basin. And then ultimately, if we live in the Great Lakes Basin, and we do, it'll ultimately end up in the Great Lakes. So that basin, that Great Lake Basin, is the largest freshwater watershed in the world. That was another thing that I never really understood. It's 295,200 square miles. And that's a lot of water. Every drop of water flowing into those lakes comes from the watersheds. So when you think about the Great Lakes themselves, 40.8 billion gallons of water a day are withdrawn from the lakes in the Great Lakes Basin. Almost 41 billion gallons of water every day. And so another interesting statistic about these lakes is they don't really connect to one another. They're all separate. If you look at the map, you can see the lakes, and then you see the surrounding watershed. So they're connected by about 5,000 tributaries. So these are all the little streams and lakes and things that are in the watersheds that ultimately dump water into those Great Lakes. And I know as part of AWLA, when we're talking about people joining AWLA, they'll quite often tell us, well, I don't live on the lake. I really shouldn't care about the lake. Well, you really do need to care, because what you do on your land affects really the water of many people around the area that you live in. So the other thing that's interesting, or maybe it's the scary part, is only 1% of the water exits the Great Lakes Basin versus the St. Lawrence River. You can see the St. Lawrence River up in the upper right-hand corner. So you've got all of that water in the lakes, but it pretty much stays there, because it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it evaporates, it gets used. Water's withdrawn for industry, for power generation, for agriculture. But basically, the water is used, and then it goes back into the lake, and it pretty much stays there. So if there's a lot of pollutants or contaminants, they're going to sit there and stay there for a long, long time. So that makes the lakes pretty vulnerable to to pollution and different types of contaminants. So remember what I said earlier about a watershed? Well, the Finger Lakes are part of the Great Lake Basin. You can see the little red circle down there on the right-hand side. That's where we are, and we're part of that great big massive area of 21% of all the fresh water in the world. And the strange thing about it is that now, for the first time, we've had harmful algal blooms in all of the Finger Lakes, and the Great Lakes are having them as well. So this idea of continually holding contaminants is starting to take hold, and I think Seth Jensen will be talking about that issue here in a little bit. So what's happening is it's really not good. They're increasing. The Owasco Lake particularly is vulnerable, and in reading about that, obviously we know the Seneca Lake is the largest of the Finger Lakes, and you would think, well, that's the largest lake, that should be the most vulnerable, but it really isn't. Our lake is, and here's why. Well, the lake is only 11 square miles, but the watershed is 208 square miles. So it's really, of all the Finger Lakes, excuse me, it has the largest ratio of water to land mass. And so that means that every drop of water that falls within that watershed, those 208 square miles, ultimately ends up in the lake. So Owasco Lake holds 212 billion gallons of water. But the other interesting thing about the lake is it refreshes itself every 4 years. So in talking to Adam Effler, so what's that mean? Well, basically what it means is that those 212 billion gallons, they leave, and they're replaced by another 212 billion gallons of water. So I never thought about that before either. I just look at the lake. The lake is what the lake is, but the lake isn't what the lake is. It's a lake now, but 4 years later, it's going to be a different lake. So that's another thing that we were I was kind of taken aback by. And the other thing I want to show you is something called River Runner. So you can go online and just Google River Runner. And if you live anywhere in the world now, you can zoom into the place that you live. You can zoom right into your backyard and drop a droplet of water, and it'll show you where it goes. So here's a little demonstration of a droplet of water that I dropped in just south of the village of Moravia. And it'll show you the journey that it takes before it gets to the Great Lakes Basin. And hopefully it'll... So it goes down through the lake. Wiggles its way through, it's got to go pass through Cross Lake, through Baldwinsville. Now, Phoenix, Fulton, and then ultimately into Lake Ontario. Look at the journey that drop of water takes just to get to the Great Lakes Basin, that 21% of the world's fresh water. It is kind of fascinating. I encourage you to do that. Just go to River Runner, have a little fun, and try it and see how that works for you. So, just to come back to this, remember that Owasco and all the Finger Lakes water remains a resident in the Great Lakes Basin for a very long time. That's that 21% of all the fresh water in the world. And so I guess in closing, if there's one thing I would like you to remember, it's not just the water, it's the shed. It's the land surrounding the water that makes the difference in the water quality that we deal with every day. Once the water's in the lake, it's very difficult to deal with, but if we can treat it and be kind to it before it gets to the lake, it makes it better for everybody.